And they're identical in all other aspects except.
Okay.
Exactly.
Very good.
So we won't have any delays. And I'm sure the bailiffs have shared with you, we've had a little delay in getting the jury here.
We've heard, Judge.
I'm expecting them in the next 10 minutes or so. Does the state have their witnesses? Or I believe, Ms. Nicholson, you were still putting on evidence.
Yes, Your Honor, the state has their witnesses available.
Okay, so after Ms. Nicholson finishes, you have 2 more live persons, is that correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
And is it y'all's intention to rest after that?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. So I don't know how long that will take, but however long it is, when that concludes, we'll stop and have a short break and you can decide which order you wish to go.
Okay.
Okay? Off the record.
Judge, we would request that,
Oh, yeah, let's put this on the record. Thank you.
Judge, we'd request that since the defendant is not a flight risk, that there's no need to have her in leg irons in the courtroom.
And does the state have any objection to that?
State has no objection, Judge.
Okay. Then we will abstain from the leg irons. Thank you. Off the record. Thank you for remembering your thought. So as soon as the jury gets here, well, most of them are here. When the rest get here, we'll get started.
with what occurred in this case. So I completely understand that decision and agree with it, but the sudden passion, again, it doesn't neatly fit into this particular scenario. I understand why the judge is giving the instruction. I understand why the state would object to it and the defense would want it.
Kind of one less thing for the appeal?
Absolutely. If the judge denies the defense, then there's another appellate issue for the appellate court to decide. So you give the defense, and especially, honestly, it's a lot of times if you think, oh, this is kind of a close call, but I want to save the issue on appeal, I'm going to go ahead and give it, let the jury rule on it and rule against it versus me ruling against it.
So we heard this discussion about taking her leg shackles off. Talk to me about why they agreed to take her leg shackles off. Why the jury? Why would they do that? And we'll see her in street clothes, not in a jail jumpsuit, and also why that would be the case.
Any individual who is in custody at the time of their trial or sentencing hearings is not to be in any way restrained in front of the jury in a way that the jury can see. So jail jumpsuits, shackles that the jury can see, any of those things communicate to the jury this is a dangerous person. And you don't want that subconscious or that underlying current of a message from the court or of a system that this person is dangerous, because you don't want that to influence their ultimate verdict in the case. So the leg shackles are very common because they're under the table. The tables usually have a privacy barrier. Nobody would see the shackles. It's, again, the attempt is to make the courtroom as safe as possible, to reduce the risk of flight of an individual. If the judge does not believe that is a real risk, then the shackles can come off and it's not an issue. There are several ways that a sheriff's deputy, that the sheriff has to secure prisoners inside the courtroom that are not obvious, everything from stun belts to knee locking mechanisms that are under the clothes. Again, the dependent issue is whether or not this person's a flight risk. Do we think they're going to try to run? Do we think they're going to bolt? And I think the judge is confident in this case, and the state didn't object, that this person is not going to attempt to flee from the courtroom, and therefore those extra restraints aren't necessary.
Let's discuss the appeal bond process and how the law changed in 2017.
Well, it used to be if you were sentenced to 10 years or less, absent being some very rare circumstances, if you were sentenced to 10 years or less from the jury, you were able to post an appeal bond. So while your appeal is pending, which often takes 2-3 years to resolve, you are not actually in custody, you're out, and you are able to basically live within some parameters of normal life with the rules set by the judge. And they actually changed that in 2017 to specifically say that for the offense of murder and other violent offenses that are listed in the new 42A 005, I believe it is, or 025, that those offenses are not eligible for appeal bonds. So no matter what sentence she receives, even if it was the minimum, she cannot post an appeal bond and be out of custody during the appeal process.
Any idea what the decision making in the legislature was behind that change?
Typically you get something happens in that receives a newsworthy attention where an individual is sentenced and receives a appeal bond, and there's outrage over a person being let out during their appeal.
There would certainly be outrage in this case.
Absolutely.
There's no doubt about that.
And that usually causes a reaction by the legislature to say, oh, well, we need to change this law, or we need to change it. In general, the judge has some discretion, but in an appeal bond, the judge didn't used to have discretion. If it was 10 years or less, the only issue was how much the appeal bond is going to be, not whether one has to be granted. Now there's a lot of more discretion that's given to the judge to be able to adjust conditions, and also in any case of a felony conviction, deny an appeal bond if they believe it wouldn't be safe for the community for her to do so.
Folks want to know if Amber Guyger will take the stand. If you were her lawyer, would you put her on the stand?
No, is the short answer.
Why not?
I think the prosecution would absolutely eviscerate her on those text messages, on those social media posts. I think, even though I believe it was necessary and the defense had to put her on in guilt innocence in order to get to the charge they needed, I don't think she helped herself. I think ultimately she cost herself in front of the jury, and the prosecution did an excellent job of cross-examining her and getting the admissions they needed to show that what she did and the steps that were taken. There were so many opportunities for her to stop this tragedy from happening, and she just simply missed every opportunity to do so. So I don't see how it could help her to take the stand. Now, this issue of sudden passion, they must feel as though in order not to put on the stand, they have to feel that the testimony about Amber already in guilt innocence was enough for the jury to consider that and meaningfully consider that option. And it probably was. To the extent the jury is going to consider it at all or give it any credence, they have enough information to consider it right now. There's really nothing to gain from putting her on the stand. What you're going to hear from is loved ones, maybe coworkers, maybe other police officers, or persons, first responders, who are going to talk about her work ethic, what kind of person she is, and how an officer would react.
Okay, we're getting some sound from the courtroom now. Okay, so we're watching the courtroom. The judge is in there. We're just not sure what's going on. Judge, what do you think's going on right now?
We may still be gathering the jury, making sure they're ready to come in. They've had a chance to use facilities if they need to, have a cup of coffee if they need to, be ready to come in. That gathering of the jury sometimes takes a few minutes to be able to get done. When there's sequestered, it's even easier because you don't have people arriving at different times and stuck in traffic. Everybody arrives at the same time. But you typically at this point are just waiting on the jury to assemble so that you can bring them in and get started.
So, Jay Chapman.
I believe has a possibility to inflame the jury, and because of that, you don't want those to be the reason a person gets convicted. You want the reason to be simply because the facts of the offense support a conviction on the elements of the cause. During the punishment phase, it loosens up.
It's kind of no holds barred.
And during the punishment phase, it is this person's life is now in front of the jury, because you're assessing so many factors when you're trying to decide what the sentence should be, whether it should be a rehabilitation issue, whether it should be a deterrence issue, whether it should be a punishment for punishment's sake issue. All these things have to come in play, and so a person's full life story is on display.
Well, and some of the really deeply troubling text messages, one of them revolved around the 2018 Martin Luther King Jr. Day parade, and someone had asked Amber Guyger when the event would end, and she responded, "When MLK is dead, ... oh wait, ... And then and also in that same exchange, there was some discussion about using pepper spray. And then in another exchange from later that year, Geiger and Martin Rivera, her partner, they messaged each other about their black coworkers. And Rivera writes, expletive, "I was at this area with 5 different black officers, not racist, but expletive." And then she responds, "Not racist, but just have a different way of working, and it shows."
I think those are going to be very damaging to her ultimately. I mean, for anybody out there, if you have to start a text or a tweet or a communication with "not racist, but," don't send it, don't write it, don't do it. It is
because it probably is racist.
Why would you have to preface it that way if it wasn't? And it's absolutely just horrible that kind of attitude could exist, and unfortunately, I think this has an effect of the punishment phase. Anybody who held out for her in guilt innocence, anybody who was in the jury room fighting for her, either for a lesser included offense or a not guilty, it boomerangs. You hear this thing happen, and that person becomes the most vocal, outspoken person for a harsh punishment because they have been betrayed by this attitude that's being displayed in the punishment phase evidence. It is, unfortunately, I think it's absolutely going to be something that is going to work against her strongly in this case.
You think that adds years to her sentence?
Absolutely. I honestly thought that maybe we would see a single-digit sentence when I first heard the verdict. A lot of discussion among lawyers has been this issue of whether jurors discuss punishment during the deliberations for guilt innocence. You're instructed not to, but sometimes it occurs. And sometimes there's these compromise verdicts, not just for lesser included, but you compromise and say, okay, we'll find her guilty, but we will not be harsh in punishment. I think you're looking at least double digits here in this one. And I think it is going to be something the jurors absolutely feel like reflects something that makes the situation as if it could be any worse, even worse for her.
I don't recall the exact wording of the text, but there was also some text about a dog.
German Shepherd.
Yeah, the German Shepherd. I mean, just all these texts are I searched for a word. Problematic. There may be a stronger word, but they're not good. These are not the kind of text messages anybody should send, or even think those kind of things.
And I tell you, you ask why wouldn't you put Amber Guyger on the stand in the punishment phase? These text
They will
messages,
slice and dice her.
these social media posts would keep it from happening. Anything she says to try to minimize them, or oh no, that's not what I meant, is going to be patently disbelieved. It's going to be eviscerated by this experienced prosecutor. And there's just no upside. She will be filleted if she takes the stand and by these text messages and these social media posts. The social media posts are important too. This attitude of, God bless the snipers. It's not an uncommon attitude, but it also seems to communicate a violent streak, a streak towards shoot first, ask questions later, that is certainly pervasive in some people. And if this is an attitude she's showing, that's going to be a concern for the jury.
People are asking how were the text messages let in? Yesterday, the prosecution obviously wanted to put them in. The defense argued that it was prejudicial, not probative, I think was the word they used. Explain to folks why these text messages would come in now.
And again, the punishment phase is more of an opportunity to kind of lay bare a person's entire life, their entire personality, their entire method of living, and to give the jury a full assessment of who they are as a person versus just did they commit this specific offense. Because when you're taking into consideration what a punishment should be, the code allows the full range of these issues to come out and for the jury to consider them all in deciding what the appropriate punishment is. 403, that there's a balancing test that's required for any judge when you're allowing evidence in. If evidence has to be relevant, first of all, but if it is relevant, it can still be excluded if its probative value is substantially outweighed by its prejudicial effect. And that was the defense argument. The probative value is substantially outweighed by the prejudice effect. I heard a lawyer object one time to that very issue. Judge, this is prejudicial for my client. And the other side stood up and said, Judge, everything I do is going to be prejudicial to his client because that's what I'm trying to show. So it can't just be that it's prejudicial. It's supposed to be prejudicial. It's supposed to influence the
because it's the punishment phase.
Absolutely. So it has to substantially outweigh the prejudice effect. In other words, it would be so inflaming that the jury would not be able to thoughtfully consider the options, but would have an emotional reaction that would be unjust in a case.
So what do you think's happening in court right now?
It appears as though we're just waiting for the jury to assemble still. Again, I'm not sure I fully understand why if the jury's sequestered. It could be that the entire jury was delayed for some reason. It could be that a witness could be delayed. It is unusual for the judge just to sit there in the courtroom unless we believe that it's impending, that we're going to have the trial resume pretty quickly.
Well, because she's standing up like the jury's about to come in.
I would expect if there was going to be any substantial delay, then the judge would exit the courtroom. But evidently, it appears to be her position that the jury's about to come in. Now, sometimes when a witness is delayed, maybe the witness is on a different floor in the courthouse, that'll cause these delays occasionally. But most typically, we're just waiting for the jury to assemble.
Let's explain to folks how long she'll have to serve once the sentence is handed down.
Well, any sentence she receives, she'll have to serve half before she's eligible for parole, or 30 years, whichever is less. So when you talk about life sentences in Texas, absent it being a capital offense, their probation eligibility for a offense like this, for a violent offense, is typically a half-time. And when there's a finding of a deadly weapon, it's a half-time. So that means that before even parole eligibility exists, before you can even be considered for parole, your actual time served not including good time, not including any extra credits you may receive.
That's Your Honor, the ready call our next witness.
Actual
State calls Alexis Stoffel.
Ma'am, would you please raise your right hand and be sworn? Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you will give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. You might adjust the microphone.
Good morning, Ms. Stoffel. Please state your name and spell your name first and last for the court's reporter.
My name is Alexis Stossel, Alexis, last name Stossel.
And Ms. Stoffel, how did you know Lawful Jamal?
Botham and I first met at Harding my junior year, it was 2013. We had both been selected to sit on the College of Business Student Advisory Board. So there are about 10 or 12 students that are recognized as leaders as part of Harding University, and we sat on a board together to work to improve the business building and to help improve students during their time at Harding and after. I had always known of Botham. I mean, everybody knows Botham. But I had never met him until the day that we sat on that board. And after that day, we were best friends ever since.
Is it fair to say that Botham was your person?
Yes. Next to my husband, Botham was my absolute person.
During your time at Harding, how did you recognize Botham affecting the students on campus?
Botham was a natural leader. I mean, in every aspect between friendships, groups that he was involved with, he took a leadership role. People gravitated towards him. It didn't matter if you didn't know him personally or you just were in the same room. You just felt welcomed by his presence.
Okay. Excuse me. And how did your husband and Botham get along?
I always joked that once I had introduced the two of them that it was me that was the third wheel because they talked nonstop about sports and life. And anytime something would happen in the NBA, oh man, Botham would immediately text my phone and say, I gotta talk to Jacob. And I finally was like, you have his number, just call him. I don't wanna talk about sports. But they loved to get together and we used to hang out a lot.
Can I push the window, Sean?
Yes.
I'm showing you what's been identified as State's Exhibit 333, 339, 340, 341, 342, 343, 344, 345, and 346. Have you seen these photos before?
I have.
And will these, I'm sorry.
Was the first one you mentioned 333?
Did I say, I'm sorry, 338, Your Honor.
Okay.
338 through 346 consecutively. Thank you. And you've seen these photos before?
I have.
And do you think these photos would help the jury understanding our discussion about both of them?
Absolutely.
State's tendering 338 through 346 to the defense for your objection.
State has previously tendered these photos out, no objection.
They're all admitted.
Thank you. Now, Ms. Fossil, after you met both of them, well, let's go back a little bit. What type of activities was both of them involved in on the campus of Harding University?
Botham was a part of the Rock House, which is it's a community outreach center that's ministry based. He worked directly beneath Todd Gentry as sort of a ministry intern. Together, the Rock House helps put on Bisons for Christ, which Botham helped organize most of it. The students of Harding, roughly about 3,000 people, we come together for a weekend and we go into the community and we help anyone in need, whether it be, fix up their house, move things around for them, or take them somewhere. And Botham was a big part of putting that all together and kind of rallying the student body to make them want to be more involved and make them want to reach out and help the community. He was also in a social club at Harding. It's called Sub T16. He was very prideful of his club. It's a great way to get to know other students and get more involved at Harding. He was very heavily involved in the College of Business, which he majored in accounting, and he was a part of many different teams, both competitively in the College of Business and then in classes, and then like the student advisory board that we sat on together. And of course, he led worship at Harding University. It's a Christian-based college, and every day they have what's called chapel, which is 30 minutes of time where the student body meets together. They take time to worship God and get general announcements, and he was a leader with chapel as well.
And you talked about Todd Gentry, and he was here with us in the courtroom for the last 2 weeks.
Yes.
And he had to go back to Arkansas this morning.
He did. I like to call the Gentrys Botham's Arkansas parents. They were wonderful people that mentored him throughout his entire college career.
Now, when you and both of them became friends, were already dating your husband?
I actually was not dating my husband yet. My husband and I began dating about 6 months after both of them and I had met.
And how did that relationship go when you tell your husband, my guy, my person is a male friend?
Well, Botham and I like to always say that we were the exception to the rule that boys and girls can't be friends. And I told my husband, I said, hey, I love you, but this man is going to be in my life forever. And he's going to be a part of us forever because, thank you. Because I can't imagine living life without my other person.
At some point, Ms. Dawson, that you and both of them come back to Dallas.
I graduated in May of 2015, and that was when both of them started his internship at PwC. So I was starting a career, and he was beginning kind of the end phases of his college career and starting his own. And we kind of took on Dallas together. We didn't really know anybody. We had a few alumni here in Dallas, but he and I, we did everything together. I mean, sometimes he would just show up on the doorstep of my apartment with Chipotle and just say, I've got to watch Scandal, and just be quiet for an hour. So we would just hang out all the time.
What was his name that he had for you?
So, as you can tell from a lot of photos and things that you see of both of them, he stood out. And in every caption of every photo, he always made me say, you have to put your black friend Botham. So a lot of the captions in our past has got, me sitting next to him, and it says, here's my black friend Botham.
And what did he call you?
He called me Big Tex. I am obviously very tall, and I'm originally from Texas. And he said, you know, Alexis just wouldn't do. So he always referred to me as Big Tex.
Did he refer to you commonly also as Alex?
Sometimes, but not very often.
And did you come to learn that his parents thought you were a boy named Alex?
He did. The first time I met his parents, they were kind of confused because they knew my name, but they had never met me in person. And then once I had told them some stories, they were like, oh, we had thought you were a boy this whole time.
Now, Ms. Fossil, I'm going to show you some photos, and I want you to kind of tell the jury about some of these photos, okay?
Okay.
I'm showing you what's marked as State's Exhibit 346. And is that Bothans?
Yes, so this is taken at Harding. This is a part of his social club, Sub T16. When you're a part of a social club, you get a jersey with the club's name on it, and every Friday you wear that jersey on campus and all around. And something that Sub T is very much known for when they take photos is you look away with a thumbs up across your chest. So that is the classic Sub T stance at Harding.
Now, at some point, you and your husband were married, of course. What role did Bothans take in that ceremony?
So I wanted both of them to be a part of the wedding, but more so I wanted his voice to be a part of our wedding because he had such a unique voice and just a speaking voice. So he was the MC at our wedding, so he introduced everybody and he was in charge of the playlist and made sure that we cut the cake on the right time and danced on the floor, and so he was there the whole time.
And I'm showing you it's been marked as State's Exhibit 338. And what was that from?
That's from the night of our wedding, and that was taken just at the reception hall.
And so you told us a little bit of how both of them and your husband became close, fast friends. What kind of things that you all did together as a group?
Besides the usual cookouts at our house or at Bothan's apartment, we went to all kinds of sporting events together. A firm that I had worked for, I had the opportunity for a lot of free tickets to Mavericks games and to Stars games, and both of them demanded he be a part of that all the time. And so we saw, I think,
Serve the district work period in their holy days. As we gather here, our members across the country are having communication with their constituents on two subjects in particular, and one perhaps. The first is on our legislation, H.R. 3, to lower the cost of prescription drugs now. We are very pleased that the response that members are receiving as we've asked them to go out there to receive public comment on H.R. 3. And when they return, we will be ready to proceed, some in committee, others just among members, to present the legislation. H.R. 3 is important because, as I've said to you before, across the country, you could see grown men cry at meetings because of the cost of prescription drugs. It's almost impossible for them to be healthy and financially healthy with the rising cost of prescription drugs. In the last year's election, this was a very high priority. It continues to be. So when the president says that he can't do anything if he has the threat of impeachment or the consideration of impeachment, I hope he doesn't mean he doesn't want to work together to lower the cost of prescription drugs. It would give the secretary additional powers to negotiate for lower cost. It would end the disparity of cost between what consumers in America pay and what they pay in other countries. It would have a cap on out-of-pocket expenses for catastrophic Medicare expenses. It would also, in the negotiation, not only be for Medicare, but for all, and it would have an inflation rebate that reverses years of increases. So we're very pleased with the work that has gone into it so far by our three chairmen, Frank Pallone of Energy and Commerce, Richie Neal of Ways and Means, and Bobby Scott of Education and Workforce, and many members as well. We will be discussing this again over the break and the district work period when we return. At the same time, we are making progress on the U.S.-Mexico-Canada trade agreement. This is an issue of concern around the country, and we want to be sure that as we go forward, we are strengthening America's working families and our farmers who are very affected by this. This is not about trickle-down trade. We're not trickle-down economics people. We're not trickle-down trade people either, unless it hits home for our workers and our farmers in terms of enforceability. We can't be there yet. But we are on a path to yes. And as you probably know, on Friday, our task force under leadership of Richie Neal and Ways and Means put forth a counteroffer to what the administration has proposed. When we can arrive at a place where not only do we have our issues addressed, but that we have enforceability that will make it real for America's families and farmers, then we can go down that path. I hope, again, that the President saying because of other actions in terms of upholding the Constitution of the United States, that he can't work with us because I do think he wants this U.S.-Mexico-Canada trade agreement, and we want it when it is right in terms of enforceability and that we can work together. At the same time, we're hoping that we can renew our conversations about infrastructure, building the infrastructure of America. As I've said, our agenda last year when we ran was for the people. Lower the cost of health care by lowering the cost of prescription drugs. That's what we're doing. Build the infrastructure of America in a green way so that we can increase paychecks, lower health care, bigger paychecks, cleaner government. Well, I think that we can work with the administration on prescription drugs. I hope so. And infrastructure. I hope so. Clean government. That's more of a challenge. So as we gather here today, we are clearly at a place where we are legislating to try to meet the needs of the American people in a transformative way. We are investigating. We are litigating. We also are here today on the one-year anniversary of the Khashoggi, since Khashoggi was killed. It's such a very sad thing. And at the same time, you see the administration schmoozing with the very people who perhaps orchestrated that. Again, it's yesterday the Chinese observed their 70th anniversary. At the same time, the president was very positive about that. Well, observing their anniversary is one thing, praising them for it is another when they have serious repression going on right now in China, whether it's undermining the cultural, language, and religion of Tibet, whether it's the placing in education camps, 1, 2, or 3, depending on the cost, but at least 1 million Uyghurs, and whether it's the suppression of democracy in Hong Kong and just the violation of human rights throughout China. It's the same fight we've been having for years. For what does it profit a man or a country if he gains the whole world and suffers the loss of his soul? But we seem to be able to ignore the shout-out from our soul on respecting the dignity and worth of every person. So I know many of you are here. Some of you are regulars. Many of you are not. And I said to Mr. Schiff, maybe you should come to all of our meetings. We might get some coverage for what we're trying to do for the American people. But we are very proud of the work of our chairman of the Intelligence Committee. We take this to be a very sad time for the American people, for our country. Impeaching a president or having the investigation to impeach a president is not anything to be joyful about. I don't know that anybody's joyful, but it is a sad time. And as you've heard me say over and over again, in the dark days of the revolution, Thomas Paine said, the times have found us. We think the times have found us now. Not that we place ourselves in the category of greatness of our founders, But we do place ourselves in a time of urgency on the threat to the Constitution, a system of checks and balances that is being made. They fought for our independence. They declared independence. They fought and won. They established a democracy. Thank God they made the Constitution amendable so it could always ever be expanding freedom. And we see the actions of this president being an assault on the Constitution. Once we had his even admission to that, we had no choice but to go forward. It's hard. We want to weigh the equities. We want to be fair as we go forward. And we couldn't be better served than by the leadership of our chairman of the Intelligence Committee, Adam Schiff, and it's my honor to present him to you now.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you for leading the entire House of Representatives through this very fraught time in the history of the Congress, indeed the history of the country. I also want to express my own condolence once again to the family of Jamal Khashoggi, who bravely sought to advocate for free expression in Saudi Arabia, and it cost him his life. We are deeply in his debt, and we are determined to bring about justice for those who were responsible for that heinous murder. It's also an appropriate time to recognize the danger facing journalists all over the world. In terms of the issues that we've been focused on this week, I want to give you a brief update of what has transpired really just within the last week. Last Thursday, the Intelligence Committee held an open hearing with the Acting Director of National Intelligence. The following day, Chairman Engel issued a subpoena to the State Department in close consultation with myself and Chairman Cummings. We are deeply concerned about Secretary Pompeo's effort now to potentially interfere with witnesses whose testimony is needed before our committee, many of whom are mentioned in the whistleblower complaint. And we want to make it abundantly clear that any effort by the Secretary, by the President, or anyone else to interfere with the Congress's ability to call before it relevant witnesses will be considered as evidence of obstruction of the lawful functions of Congress. And more than that, will allow an adverse inference to be drawn as to the underlying facts. That if they are going to prevent witnesses from coming forward to testify on the allegations in the whistleblower complaint, that will create an adverse inference that those allegations are in fact correct. On Monday, I issued a subpoena to Rudy Giuliani, again in consultation with Chairman Cummings and Engel. We expect Mr. Giuliani to comply with the legal process we are using. He is obviously a key figure in all of this by his own admission, as well as by the allegations in the whistleblower complaint. Today, and just within the last half hour, Chairman Cummings noticed a subpoena that will go out later this week or next week, after the notice period has expired, that committee intends to subpoena documents that the White House has been withholding from Congress. We are obviously coordinating very closely with Chairman Cummings on that. On Thursday, Ambassador Volker is scheduled to appear before our committee. And on Friday, the Inspector General of the IC, Mr. Atkinson, will appear before the committee and testify as well. The last time that the Inspector General testified, we did not have the complaint. We now do. And we certainly intend to ask the Director about the efforts that were made to corroborate that complaint, which we now know the Inspector General found both credible and urgent. Next week, we have also scheduled a deposition or interview with the former U.S. Ambassador Yovanovitch to Ukraine. And we are in discussion with other State Department witnesses to secure their depositions. So we've been very busy, as you can tell, this week. We're going to be very busy again next week. We are proceeding deliberately, but at the same time, we feel a real sense of urgency here that this work needs to get done, and it needs to get done in a responsible period of time. Thank you.
Thank you. Just one moment, please. decide who asks the question. Do we have any questions first on the work to meet the needs of the American people in terms of USMCA and the HR 3 on that subject?
How do you envision working with this president on these key Democratic agenda items, lowering prescription drug costs, ensuring tougher gun safety measures, as you're actively considering whether to remove?
But they have nothing to do with each other. We have a responsibility to uphold our oath of office, to support and defend the Constitution of the United States. We also have a responsibility to get the job done for the American people. The president has said he wants this U.S.-Mexico Canada trade agreement to go forward, and we are awaiting the language on enforceability. So does it mean that he can't do that? That's really up to him. And I do expect that he does want that, and that he does need that, and that he's not going to blame it on us because we are honoring our oath of office. And then he says that he wants to lower the cost of prescription drugs. The American people want us to do that. So as the president saying, if you question my actions, I can't agree on any subject, then the ball is in his court on that. But many of you have always been interested in USMCA. Any ongoing interest there? Yes, sir.
On the USMCA, the president keeps saying that the USMCA doesn't pay for his wall. How does money generated by the USMCA work its way into the general fund to be appropriated by Congress?
It doesn't. It doesn't. Yeah, it doesn't. Okay. Yes, ma'am. No, I'm not calling on you. I'm calling on this young lady here. Thank you.
Lisa from PBS NewsHour. Thank you for having this news conference. A question for you and one for chairmanship. For you, do you have plans or have you taken off the table the idea of a full House vote on an...
I'm first, excuse me, dear. I'm at first doing
Oh, I'm sorry. That
HR 3. Anyone on HR 3? Does anybody in this room care about the cost of prescription drugs and what it means to America's working families? From time to time, you've asked those questions. Does anyone care about the USMCA, U.S.-Mexico-Canada agreement?
A hard, fast date on when you need this to be resolved on
This being what?
USMCA?
No, we're on a path to yes, as far as the trade agreement is concerned. And at some point, I'm just saying it's either yes or no. We either have enforceability or we don't. But I'm hopeful that we will, and I'm hopeful that it will be soon.
Is there a deadline you've given the administration or anything?
No, well, we have a good working relationship. Believe me, the quiet you hear is progress. And we go back and forth, and over this break, the staffs are between the two, the trade rep and our negotiators are seeking clarification and where there's room for cooperation, where we may have more challenges, but it's going in a forward direction. So we're very pleased with that because, again, we're trying to find common ground with the president. He always wanted this. We do too. And let's just find our common ground in that regard.
Another question on policy before we get to the other news of the day, which is impeachment. What about the quiet we hear on gun legislation? 2 or 3 weeks ago, the White House telegraphed we might hear what the president would support in some sort of gun package. And we and the press have heard nothing. Have you heard anything from the White House?
Well, the most recent communication I had from the White House on gun violence prevention was a call from the president last Tuesday. So we can segue from one subject to the next here. He called early that morning to say that how happy I would be to see the progress that he was making on coming to agreement on gun violence prevention. I was curious about what that progress could be. He said he was working with Democrats and Republicans. I don't know of any. I reminded him that we had sent a bill over to the Senate, H.R. 8 and H.R. 1112, 2 pieces of legislation that will save the most lives, and that I would hope that whatever he was talking about was very close to that. Oh, yes, you're going to be very pleased. That's the last I've heard of that. That is when the president segued into the telephone call in which he admitted that this call took place and that what happened was perfect. I said, Mr. President, it's not perfect, it's wrong. But your admission to what has now been in the public domain informs the timing of how we go forward. Again, that was the last I heard from them. Let me just say on gun violence prevention, we're not going away until we get legislation signed into law that protects our children. I said to the president on another occasion, on the 200th day of the Chuck Schumer and I called the president on that. That was a couple of Sundays ago. I think like the 15th of September, maybe 2.5 weeks ago. That was the 200th day since we sent over H.R. 8. And I said to the president, I pray for you and the safety of you and your family. And I hope that God will give you an illumination, an enlightenment to pray, to work for the safety of other families in our country. So again, the most recent, I'm not going to say the last, I hope it's not the last, but the most recent communication I've had from the White House was in the same call where the president admitted to what he said in that phone conversation. Okay? Now you have,
Thank you. Speaker, on impeachment?
yes.
Have you taken off the table, or do you plan for a full House vote on an impeachment inquiry? And chairmanship, as the White House seems to be, in your words, you're worried about interference, delays. In the past, sometimes it's taken a long time, years, to compel documents and testimony from the White House. Are you preparing for a court battle, and how do you make sure that that happens in what you say an expeditious manner?
First of all, there's no requirement that there be a floor vote. That's not anything that is excluded. And by the way, there's some Republicans that are very nervous about our bringing that vote to the floor.
Just say that we are concerned that the White House will attempt to stonewall our investigation, much as they have stonewalled other committees in the past. It's why I say the White House needs to understand that any action like that, that forces us to litigate or have to consider litigation, will be considered further evidence of obstruction of justice. And of course, that was an article of impeachment against Nixon, the obstruction of the lawful functions of Congress, that is. We will also draw the inference, though, as appropriate, that they are trying to conceal facts that would corroborate the allegations in the whistleblower complaint. So we'll have to decide whether to litigate or how to litigate. We're not fooling around here, though. We don't want this to drag on months and months and months, which appears to be the administration's strategy. So they just need to know that even as they try to undermine our ability to find the facts around the president's effort to coerce a foreign leader to create dirt that he can use against a political opponent, that they will be strengthening the case on obstruction if they behave that way.
Madam Speaker, thank you very much. I would like to ask Madam Speaker and also Chairman this as well. The President wants to interview the whistleblower. He says that he has the right to meet his accuser. Your response, both of you, please.
The whistleblower has the right on the statute to remain anonymous, and we will do everything in our power to make sure that that whistleblower is protected, that whistleblower's preferences in terms of their anonymity are respected. And let's not make any mistake here. The president wants to make this all about the whistleblower and suggest people that come forward with evidence of his wrongdoing are somehow treasonous and should be treated as traitors and spies. This is a blatant effort to intimidate witnesses. It's an incitement to violence. And I would hope, and we're starting to see members of both parties speaking out against attacking this whistleblower or others that have pertinent information. So the other thing I wanted to underscore, though, is what the whistleblower has set out that is within our power to this date to confirm, we see confirmed in that call record. The president can attack the whistleblower rhetorically all the president wants. It doesn't change the fact that the record of that call shows the President of the United States in a same conversation, indeed immediately after the Ukraine president asked for more military help, the President of the United States asked that leader a favor, though. And no attack on the whistleblower or anyone else is going to change those underlying facts.
On the subject of, on the subject of the whistleblower, I said to the president on that call, you've come into my wheelhouse. 25 years on Intelligence Committee as a member, as ranking member, as Mr. Schiff was before he became the chairman when we got the majority. So I was part of the gang of 4 before I was even in the leadership as a gang of 8. So for 25 years, one way or another. I was there when we improved the whistleblower legislation in the late 90s. I was part of that. I was there when we made further improvements, and President Obama made by executive, I don't know if it was executive order, but executive action improvements in the whistleblower legislation, and then we have further legislation. And then I was there when we created the Office of the Director of National Intelligence and what his responsibility was in terms of a whistleblower. So this is very, I hope that you understand, and I suspect that you do, the seriousness of the President of the United States saying he wants to interview that person. We will treat the President with fairness as we go forward. We will have investigations and questioning that are worthy of the Constitution of the United States. It's unworthy of the Constitution of the United States to do what he did in that call, and he admitted it to me. He said it's perfect. No, it's not perfect. It's wrong. A, and B, that protecting whistleblowers is a very, very important requirement that we have. The intelligence community recognizes the importance of whistleblowers. Protecting whistleblowers who see wrongdoing of any kind in our government is essential. So the president probably doesn't realize how dangerous his statements are when he says he wants to expose who the whistleblower is and those who may have given the whistleblower that information. This is a very serious challenge that the president has put there. It's very sad. I don't see impeachment as a unifying thing for our country. I weighed those equities hard and long till I had the president's admission that he did what he did on that call. Yes, ma'am.
One big picture question, then one logistical question, just following up on what you just said. Some Republicans have said that the president's phone call wasn't great, but that it isn't an impeachable offense. Is it possible that you're making too much of one phone call?
Absolutely not. I'm going to yield to you. Yeah.
Well, if you think about what the framers were concerned about at the time of the drafting of the Constitution, they were paramountly concerned about foreign interference in American affairs. They wanted to ensure that the President of the United States was defending the interests and national security of the United States and not corruptly, secretly advancing some private agenda with a foreign power. It's hard to imagine a set of circumstances that would have alarmed the founders more than what's on that call, where you have a president using the full power of his office to try to effectively coerce a foreign leader that is completely dependent on our country for military, economic, diplomatic, and other support, to intervene in our election to help his campaign. It's hard to imagine a more corrupt course of conduct. So to my Republican colleagues that say, there's nothing to see here, or yeah, it's bad, but is it really something you'd remove from the president from office for? They're going to have to answer, if this conduct doesn't rise to the level of the concern the founders have, what conduct does? Now, we only know some of the facts at this point. The call record seems to be pretty indisputed. The suspension of military assistance is undisputed now. The sequestration of this call record and maybe others into a file in which they were never supposed to be placed, a file that is for classified information of the highest order, covert action, for example, those facts are not contested. But all the facts around that we still need to flesh out. What was the State Department's role? What was the Secretary's role? What was the role of the Attorney General? There's a great more that we need to know to understand the full depth of the president's misconduct. And maybe when that comes out, it will persuade some of those Republicans to recognize the gravity of the situation. But I think we have to be realistic here. There seems to be no floor below which this president can drop that some of the GOP members, and maybe even many of the GOP members, would not be willing to endorse, look away from, avoid comment on, let alone rise to condemn as incompatible with the duties of his office.
Make no mistake, in that telephone call, the president undermined our national security because of what he had done a few days earlier. So the president said, well, I didn't say that in the call. No, the sequencing of it. You have to look at the sequence. A few days before, the president withdrew that. Now, why? Why would that just come from the president? There was no, as far as we know, and we'll find out if there is, any National Security Council justification for the president withdrawing assistance that had been passed by the Congress of the United States in a bipartisan way. And then the president just on his own decided he was going to use it as leverage. So using that as leverage, we supported that military assistance in the interest of our national security, undermining our national security, undermining his oath of office to protect and defend the Constitution because he was overthrowing an act of Congress just on his own, undermining the integrity of our elections. And that's what means something to people in their lives. They have to know that their vote counts and that it will be counted as cast. And this President of the United States is stooping to a level that is beneath the dignity of the Constitution of the United States. And our founders, since the chairman mentioned our founders, they put guardrails in the Constitution because they knew there might be someone who would overplay his or her power. They never thought that we would have a president who would kick those guardrails over and disregard the Constitution and say, Article 2 says that I can do whatever I feel like. So this is sad. We have to be prayerful. We have to be worthy of the Constitution as we go forward. We have to be fair to the president, and that's why this is an inquiry and not an outright impeachment. And we have to give the president his chance to exonerate himself, but he thinks what he did was perfect. So we have that situation. But I say to my colleagues, calmness, quiet, so that we can hear, what is being said in this regard. Again, on that very day, September 17th, that was Constitution Day, a Tuesday, 2 Tuesdays ago from yesterday. That was when that explosion hit of what possibly happened in that phone conversation, which the president confirmed to me in our call. And that day was the day we observed the adoption of our Constitution, September 17th. On that day, way back when Benjamin Franklin left Independence Hall, people said to him, what do we have, Dr. Franklin, a monarchy or a republic? He said, a republic, if we can keep it. It is our responsibility to keep that republic with the genius of a separation of powers, three co-equal branches of government, each a check and balance on the other. Separation of power, a republic, if we can keep it. That's our responsibility. That's the oath of office that we take, and that is what is one of the reasons why we just have to look at the facts and the Constitution. Any other objections people may have to the president have no place in this discussion in terms of, is he too cowardly to protect children from gun violence? Is he too cruel to protect dreamers? Is he too in denial to understand climate change? The list goes on. Save that for the election. This is about the facts relating to the Constitution, and that is how we will proceed with dignity, with respect, prayerfully, and again, worthy of the sacrifice of our founders, the sacrifice of our men and women in uniform who fight for our freedom, and the aspirations of our children so they'll live under future presidents who will honor the Constitution of the United States. Thank you all very much.
Ron, I need you up here as soon as you get a chance. Hold your cable when you come. You're gonna knock your coffee over too.
You know, what really I think got me in Alexis's testimony was that description of that last text message.
Absolutely.
LOL, and then waking up the next morning and finding out that he's been killed. And she said, I just kept screaming, wait, wait, wait. I hung up the phone and I called both of them 7 times and there was no answer. I had, you know, it just, she said, you know, she wishes she had seen that text and could have responded to tell him how much he meant to her, and that maybe it would have made the pain just a little less.
Right, and that description of how she reacted is so visceral that I'm sure it was hard for the jury to hear. I'm sure it had a very emotional impact, and of course his father's testimony as well. It's not just about the loss and the pain of the loss, but the loss of the future with these friends and family members. That's so hard for them to understand and accept, and that's going to be something that I think definitely comes into play in the jury's deliberations.
There's a question here, as a judge, how hard is it not to be affected by testimony like that?
Very hard. I mean, we're human. We have the advantage of hearing it more often than other people do. And so you do kind of get a little bit of a crusty outer shell that keeps it from sinking too deeply in, but it still affects you. It is still something that real raw emotion will get to you, especially Judge Kemp. I've seen a couple of the habits I used to have when I was on the bench and heard that real emotional testimony that I could feel was getting to me. I would find something to distract me. I'd start taking notes. I would maybe type something on my computer, anything I could to kind of distract me from the power of the testimony. The jury doesn't have that. The jury has to tune in to every word, and they're feeling it in its full force.
And it is very powerful testimony, and then of course his father just talking about how Sunday mornings are no longer the same because they would talk after church, and I wrote down he said, how could we have lost both of them? Such a sweet boy who tried his best to live a good, honest life. He loved God. How could this have happened to him? How could this be possible? And then he talks about how he still wants to see him. It was very, that's just, as a parent, you just can't imagine the prospect of never seeing your child again in such a senseless way that this happened.
And the senseless way is exactly right. That question of why, how could it have happened, how could it have happened, was a question that the jury ultimately agreed there is no good reason why it happened. There was no justification as to why it happened. And it'll be, again, I think it'll be felt in the jury room during the deliberations, and that pain is something that is so hard to identify with unless you've lost a child, but also so easy to understand in a way, because that emptiness that would fill and that void you would have will never be filled.
Oh, somebody's asking what was the text message about the German Shepherd. I don't remember the exact wording of that text message, but it was an exchange back and forth about a dog and a dog being racist. It's hard. If you go back if you want to listen to that, go back and look at that.
Right.
You can go on YouTube to yesterday's testimony, and it's towards the end of that, and you'll see the prosecutor puts all those text messages up on the screen and explains the back and forth. Let's talk about the contrast. Okay, so we've got these text messages, this Pinterest that we saw yesterday, and now all this testimony we've gotten from his friends and family. This contrast between these two people.
And I think that's part of what the prosecution wants to draw a clear distinction between the way that both of Jean used his text messages, his life, his actions to lift other people up, and the way that Ms. Geiger would use her social media posts, use her text messages to make derogatory comments about other people, to tear people down, to talk about violence, to talk about aggression, instead of the very uplifting, positive way that Mr. Jean would do with his messages and his communications. And that's part of that distinct difference. Alexis Stossel's embracing of Mr. Jean and the way they help each other and the love that they had for each other and the faith that they had together, compared to this kind of caustic, derogatory, racist communications that Ms. Geiger has with her friends, is going to be a stark contrast and is going to be something the jury cares about ultimately, I believe.
Some people are saying they are sorry that they missed this testimony. You can easily go to our YouTube page on WFA, our WFA YouTube page, and rewind that testimony and listen to it for yourself. It was gripping, painful, hard testimony to listen to. It really puts the loss of this wonderful young man into context. When you think about this young man who, by all accounts, lived a upright Christian life, and to see his life cut short in this way is really heartbreaking. And again, just the contrast in what we saw with these text messages and the decision that was made that day to go on into that apartment and confront. And it's a tough one. What do you think the prosecution is now wrapped up? What do they have to do now?
If by they you mean the prosecution, they're going to sit back and listen to what I anticipate is going to be relatives, friends, family members, maybe co-workers of Ms. Geiger, who are going to try to extol her positive virtues. The problem is the prosecution is going to cross-examine those witnesses, and most of them are going to be asked questions similar to this. Would it surprise you if Ms. Geiger was posting these racist comments? Would it surprise you if there were these violent, aggressive, at least appearance on social media as being violent and aggressive? And if that person testifies, yes, it would surprise me, then they're going to be shown the communication. Here's the text message. Here is the social media post. Is this the Amber Guyger you knew? Well, then did you really know Amber Guyger?
Right.
And that is going to be a question that each one of them is going to get asked, and that each one of them is going to find difficult to answer. Because if you answer, yes, I knew she had racist communications occasionally. If you answer that, yes, I knew she
There's
could
really
be,
no good answer.
There is no good answer to it. And that's the reason I think Ms. Geiger ultimately won't testify, is because she can't answer in a way that in any way helps her, ultimately. And I think in the end, the calculation and the weighing of the risk is too great for the defense to put her on in punishment.
How many witnesses do you think we'll see from the defense here?
I don't think it'll be very many. I think it'll be 2 or 3, and they'll be relatively short. They're attempting to evoke the same emotion that the prosecutors evoked in Mr. Jean's favor and against Ms. Geiger. They're going to try to evoke similar emotions in favor of Ms. Geiger. They're going to try to have the mom testify, please don't send my daughter away for life. She's a good person. I love her. Well, yeah, that's almost a meme into itself, that the mother gets on the stand and prays for the jury not to send away their person, the person who was just convicted. And it does have some effect, but I don't know that it can counteract the powerful emotion that we heard today.
Well, it's, for me, I think the testimony from Alexis was, I certainly, as a parent, you expect parents to miss their child and to just be heartbroken, but hearing that testimony from his best friend and just, you see how a person's life affects other people and the life that we live, and how it interplays with other people.
And it certainly seemed he was the kind of individual who wasn't satisfied just doing for himself, just trying to achieve in his career, just trying to stay in his lane. He wanted to get outside his lane. He wanted to impact other people. He wanted to be active in his church. He wanted to have that ripple effect that a life well led has. And it certainly seems like all indications he was that kind of man. And I think to some extent you're right. It's heartbreaking to listen to mom and dad talk about that, the tragedy of losing a son, and it certainly is a tragedy. But you understand that it's going to be a tragedy for mom and dad. But to hear other people who were affected by this so powerfully speak about his life and what it meant was really extraordinary.
Another person's asking, do you think we'll hear from Amber? I know we've answered that, but it can't hurt to bring it up again.
I mean, it's a calculated risk that the defense has to decide whether they're going to take. And I personally believe the risk is too great. I personally believe we will not.
Put her on the stand.
I would not put her on the stand. I understand the compulsion and the need to put her on during guilt innocence, but now I don't see how she helps herself on the stand. And there's really not much you're going to get from her that helps your argument or helps your attempt to persuade the jury. It's better, I think, right now that we hear from relatives and friends of Ms. Geiger and not from her. There's going to be too many damning questions the state could ask that she's not going to be able to answer in any way that helps her.
No. And okay, let's assume she gets on the stand. Let's assume she does take the stand again. What does she have to do?
Well, if she does, I'm going to get the popcorn out because that's going to be an entertaining cross-examination.
I didn't bring any today, I'm sorry.
Well, we're going to have to go get some because I expect the state is going to ask questions about each one of those text messages, about each one of those emails, or not the emails, but the posts, and is just going to lay bare. And she's not going to be able, again, there's no good reason or excuse to post that kind of stuff.
No.
There's no good reason or excuse to even have that thought.
If you got to start a text message with "not racist,"
exactly.
Anything, don't send the text.
Don't send it. I mean, it's bad enough that it would pop in your head, but certainly don't send it. I mean, we always, and I assume Dallas, the police department would have similar training. The judges are told, assume every text, email that you send is going to be on the front page of the paper.
Right.
And then before you hit send, how is it going to look on the front page of the paper? And I would assume that there's similar social media training in DPD. And if not, maybe they need to add that course.
Well, there's definitely, policies on social media, but perhaps people need, again, with your text messages. I know when I joined the investigative team a couple of years ago, I certainly think much longer and harder. You might think something's pithy or funny, but taken in context, of course, there is no good context for these text messages. That's the thing. There's no good explanation for them.
There's no I meant this instead of that. No, there's none of that.
There's you shouldn't have done it. You shouldn't have thought it. Period.
And what's interesting too is if you look on Channel 8, I know they have the written story has the text messages themselves, the way they were introduced into evidence, and there's a column on the far right that says deleted. And some of the text messages were deleted. So if you have any question about what she thought about how damning those text messages were, look and see what was deleted. Why would she go back and delete those certain ones?
Because she knew they looked bad.
Because she knew exactly what they were going to look like. Not look like, what they were going to mean.
Right, exactly. And so I wanted to also let you guys know, hey, Nick, is his father's testimony on our website now? We were posting his Botham's father's testimony on our website, WFA.com. It is either up or it is about to be up. Here, pretty soon. Is it up? It'll be there soon. People are also asking how much time do you think Amber Guyger could get?
I personally believe that the jury will reject the sudden passion. Because I think it evokes some of the similar issues that they had to decide in guilt innocence. And again, it's not a neat fit. It doesn't fit squarely within the events. I personally, of course, she could get 99 or life. I think the likelihood is that it'll be somewhere in that 20-year range.
By the way, that his father's testimony is now on WFA.com/Botham Jean. Let's explain to folks sudden passion this morning. Right as the proceedings got underway, both sides agreed to allow in a provision under the law. It's a provision under the penal code, under the murder statute, that allows for a murder conviction to be reduced to a second-degree felony. Explain to folks how that would work and why it is unlikely that it would come in. That a jury would agree to that.
The jury will be asked whether they find or have a reasonable doubt thereof that she caused the death of Mr. Jean under the immediate influence of sudden passion arising from an adequate cause. So you have the immediacy, you have the sudden passion, and whether it was an adequate cause. Well, she kind of provoked the cause, her choice to go in and confront whatever danger she may have believed was going on inside, kind of provoked the difficulty. So it's difficult, I think, for the jury to find yes on murder and discount the offense of justification, discount the defense of justification, and discount the defense of mistake of fact, and now find that there was the immediacy and sudden passion and adequate cause. Ultimately, I think they discount that, and they stick with their original decision that this is what is in Texas a first-degree murder charge, meaning no sudden passion, and that they put the sentencing somewhere in that range that I described earlier.
But you can see why why the prosecution or why the defense wanted to keep these text messages out of guilt innocence.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, it was.
Again, the judge's job is to try to make sure the jury focuses on the facts of the case and the law that the judge gives in the charge. Keep these extraneous issues out that could inflame, anger, impassion the jury to do something other than look at the facts of the case and determine whether the state's proven their case beyond a reasonable doubt. The text messages would be the kind of evidence that would inflame a jury, that would get those anger and passion going and cause them to maybe be distracted from the elements of the cause and the facts of the case. And so I think it was the right decision to keep them out in guilt innocence, but I also believe it's the right decision to let them in punishment.
So for the people that are just joining us, who may be coming in to watch, Amber Guyger, of course, was found guilty of murder yesterday by a 12-member jury. We are now in the punishment phase of this trial. Punishment phase kind of operates like a mini trial in and of itself. And so we have heard, yesterday we heard from his mom, his sister, a co-worker, and also from Amber Guyger's supervisor. Today we've heard from his best friend and from his father, and the prosecution has wrapped up. Now we're moving on to the defense. You think we're going to hear from 2, maybe 3 witnesses, that kind of thing?
Again, it's a guess, but I would estimate probably 2 or 3, maybe a couple more witnesses, and they're mostly going to focus on their relationship with Ms. Geiger and their opinion of her as a person, how this is a horrible, tragic mistake. They're going to repeat that, again, attitude that this is a mistake, and they're going to try to plead to the emotional side of the jury to not sentence her to a long time in the penitentiary. The state typically, you noticed in every of the state's witnesses, the defense didn't cross-examine them. They want them off the stand as quickly as possible. They want to try to
right. They don't want to prolong that.
They don't want to prolong the emotion, so they rarely ask questions. I think that you'll find that on the other side, the state will do some cross-examination.
They want to engage.
They want to engage
because they want to bring those text messages and that Pinterest page back up.
Absolutely, and they're going to maybe draw out of the witnesses their position. Well, do you understand now, and you agree with the jury's verdict? Do you believe that she was guilty? Do you believe? And if the person answers no, I don't. I think she's innocent because of a justification defense. Well, now you're confronting the jury. You're disagreeing with the jury.
Now you've ticked them off.
Now you've put them in a position opposite of you, and it makes it less likely the jury is going to empathize and sympathize with your position.
It sure feels like there's no wins here.
It is a very difficult position to be in. There's kind of a saying among criminal lawyers that deal with these cases that in misdemeanor offenses, it's about guilt innocence. You're trying to get the person not convicted, but in felony cases, it's about punishment. Because usually the evidence is sufficient that the state has to provide guilt. This was a case that was really about guilt innocence. And so the punishment's going to be interesting, and how it proceeds and what they're prepared to show is going to be interesting to see. It has not gotten better for Ms. Geiger in sentencing.
No, it's only gotten worse.
It is, and it's got, exponentially worse, in my opinion. Yesterday, I was being asked about what the sentence would be. I said, well, if there's nothing that shows any racially insensitive tendencies, if there's nothing that shows excessive force use, then I had an opinion that was relatively modest. But with those things added, I think the jury's going to be, I think there's going to actually could be a separation too. I think we're going to see some people who really want a serious long sentence, and to see what they compromise on and what they come up with will be interesting. Because it does have to be unanimous.
Would you have a ballpark?
again, I expect it to come somewhere in that 20-year range. I had a much lower estimate yesterday before I learned of all the text messages. But that, if I were guessing, that's my guess. But I've learned very early in my career, guessing at what a jury's going to do is a fool's mission. You really have no idea what the jury's thinking.
Okay, the judge is, we can see her, she's come back into the courtroom. We still don't have sound yet. The rule is that we cannot have sound in the courtroom or sound from the courtroom when they're not on the record. That the judge has been very firm on that rule. Here's another question from Facebook. If the judge had not allowed sudden passion for Amber Guyger, okay, hold on, let me read this again. If the judge doesn't allow sudden passion for a cop but does for anyone else in a similar situation, then is there an equal protection violation? Of course, she did allow it. So if it hadn't been allowed, would there have been an equal protection violation?
I don't know that I would see it. I don't know that I've ever seen an occupation be a reason why there would be an equal protection or a due process issue. It's an interesting question. I hadn't really thought about it in that angle before, but I don't think that would have kept the judge from allowing the charge of sudden passion. But I think it may affect the jury's deliberations and their determination of whether, again, this actor in this situation had an adequate cause and had that rise of sudden passion that caused an immediate reaction.
Well, we still don't have sound yet, but I just got a Facebook message from actually one of Bothans' relatives, his brother-in-law. He wants to know, if Amber gets 11 years or less, does she get a chance at appealing while being free?
The short answer is no appeal bonds on a murder charge. So even if she got the absolute minimum, which is 5 years on the murder charge, 2 years on a sudden passion, if that's found by the jury, even with the minimum, she's going to be incarcerated during any appeal.
And that the law on that changed in 2017. Prior to 2017, a person who got less than 10 years could have gotten an appeal bond.
Yes.
Let's see, we got sound back in the courtroom. Let's see what's going on here.
I don't think it adjusted.
It's never practical. You can you lean forward like this? How's that? Here's so Shelly's right over there. And James can be right behind us. Right, you got it. I'm gonna be right over there.
All right.
Thank you. You already received it. And Ms. Geiger, if you would you please raise your right hand and be sworn? Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you will give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Okay.
Thank you very much. Bishop?
Thank you. Could you tell us your name, please?
Karen Geiger.
And you're Amber's mom, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
How old are you?
66. I'll be 67 in February.
Does Amber have any siblings?
She's 2.
Can you tell us who they are?
Her oldest sister is Alana, and she has a younger brother, another brother. Alana's the oldest, and then I have a son. His name's David. He's a David.
Go ahead.
And Amber was the youngest.
So you have just 3 children, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And where did Amber grow up?
In Arlington, Texas.
Were all 3 kids fathered by the same man?
Yes, ma'am.
And what's his name?
William.
And are y'all still together?
No.
How old about was Amber when you and Bill separated?
I guess when she was about 5 or 6.
May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
Yes.
Ms. Geiger, I'm going to show you 2 photographs that have been marked as defense exhibits, number 95 and 96. Are those photos of your 3 kids in 95 and then a photo of your family in 96?
Yes. Yeah.
That's 95 and 96. Your Honor.
No objection.
They're both admitted.
Permission to publish the jury?
Yes, ma'am.
Show you defense 95. Who is on the left here in this photo?
That's Alana.
And how old is she?
I've forgotten.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I know. I'm trying to. Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
defense
And
exhibit
that's-
number 96.
And that's much later.
This is Amber in the middle.
Yes, ma'am.
She's picked you up. That's you.
Mm.
And your son here. And then
Mhm.
Lana, your daughter. And then, even though y'all aren't still together, this is the kid's dad, and that's Bill. Is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, even though y'all were separated, was Bill, excuse me, still present in Amber's life?
Yes, ma'am.
And you said Amber was around 5 when you and Bill separated?
Yes, ma'am. She was
And-
still young. She's young.
In 1995, when Amber was 6 years old, were you dating somebody?
Yes, ma'am.
And do you recall his name?
Joe.
Is that Joe Ortiz?
Yes, ma'am.
Would he stay at your house on occasion?
Yes, ma'am.
On February 25th, 1995, Amber would have been 6 years old, is that right?
Approximately. Yes, ma'am.
On
Yes,
that
ma'am.
morning, did you learn that Joe had been sexually molesting her?
Yes, ma'am.
In fact, did you call the Arlington Police Department to your house that morning?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you recall speaking with an Officer Smith with the Arlington Police Department?
Yes, ma'am.
Can you explain what you saw that morning that caused you to confront Joe?
I was going back to the bedroom. I was fixing to take a shower, and I forgot my comb. And that's when I saw him coming out of the bedroom, and then Amber came out.
And as a result of some conversation that you had with Joe and also with Amber, the police were summoned to your house, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And was Joe eventually arrested for indecency with a child, with Amber being the named victim?
Yes, ma'am.
He ended up pleading guilty on that case, is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
Can you tell us a little bit about what kind of child Amber was?
She was sweet. She loved going outside all the time, and she made friends real quick.
What elementary school did she go to?
Louise Platten.
Is that in Arlington?
Yes, ma'am.
Did she play any musical instruments when she was growing up?
She played, when she was young in Platten, she was going to Platten, she picked up the violin, and she played the violin.
About what grade was that she started playing the violin?
Well, they started that in grade school, and she continued on into junior high school. And into, so she stayed with it. She loved the violin. She loved playing the violin.
She continued playing through high school?
Yes, ma'am.
And at some point, did she also play with a mariachi band?
Yes, ma'am.
While she was in high school, did Amber work?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you recall where that was?
She started working into, I remember the earliest, I think, she worked at the mall at Stephen Barry's. Later on, she got a job working at Fridays at the airport. And she worked there. She worked her way good through school. She went to Tarrant County, and she worked at the airport to help pay for school.
Did she always work hard and try to help support herself?
Yes, ma'am.
And help you as much as she could?
Yes, ma'am.
Did Amber go to college for a while?
Yes, ma'am.
And why was it that she stopped her courses there in college?
She was so excited when she found out that I wanted her to. She was almost done. She was in her junior year, and she found out that there was a spot in the academy, and she said, "Mom, if I don't take it now, I may lose my chance." So she went on to applied for the school to go to be a police officer.
Had she always expressed an interest in law enforcement when she was growing up?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
What was one of the things that she did while she was in high school with law enforcement?
She started in grade school when she was still in grade school, the DARE program, and she loved to watch anything that had to do with the police work.
You said she was interested in the DARE program?
Yes, ma'am.
That was when she was in elementary?
Yes, and they would always have the programs, to help children, get interested in a career, that they had a passion for it. She had a passion for it, and it continued on to high school, and she went on the ride-alongs.
The ride-alongs?
Uh-huh.
And that was with which police department?
Arlington did that.
And have you got a medical condition?
I have, yes, ma'am.
What's that?
I have pulmonary fibrosis.
Is that something that Amber helped you?
She's always worried about me. So she worries about me.
Does she help take care of you and help you with your medications and things like that?
Yes, ma'am. Sure.
Ms. Geiger, after the shooting on September 6, 2018, did you get a call from Amber?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Yes, ma'am. After the shooting on September 6, 2018, did you receive a call from Amber?
Yes, ma'am.
Can you describe what she sounded like?
I had trouble understanding her.
Why is that?
She was crying.
Can you explain how she's reacted since the situation of knowing that she's killed an innocent man?
She was very upset. I couldn't understand her. When she first told me, I couldn't understand her because she was crying so hard.
Since that time until now, what have you seen as far as her remorse for accidentally going into this wrong apartment and shooting this man?
She wanted to take his place. She always would tell me she wished she could have taken his place. She feels very bad about it. She feels very bad about it. She feels bad about it.
Thank you, Ms. Geiger. I'll pass the witness, Your Honor.
Thank you, Ms. Geiger. No questions, Your Honor.
Thank you very much, Ms. Geiger. You may be excused.
Okay.
Can you just wait just a second so that we can get you some assistance?
Okay.
I don't want you to fall, okay?
Ms. Geiger, let me help you do it, okay? Okay.
Roll call on the Geiger.
You can make yourself comfortable.
Thank you.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you will give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
May I proceed? State your name, please, and spell your name for the court reporter.
Alana Geiger, ALANA GUYGER.
How old are you, Ms. Geiger?
I'm 37.
And can you tell the jury how you're employed?
I work for On the Border. I'm a server.
And you're the older sister of Amber Guyger, is that right?
Yes, sir.
How much older are you?
6 years.
Let me talk to you a little bit about growing up as the big sister in the house, where your parents separated at some point in time when you were children, is that right?
Yes, I was approximately 12.
Whose home did y'all, the three children, stay at primarily after that?
We stayed at our mom's house.
Staying there, did your mother work, or was she a stay-at-home mother?
She was a stay-at-home mother.
How was the family provided for financially?
My father provided for us financially.
After your parents were separated, did your father stay involved in you and Amber's and your brother's life?
Yes, he did.
How often would y'all see him?
About once a month, maybe, and on birthdays, and he would take us out, just him and the siblings.
Okay. As y'all got older, did you see him more often?
Yes.
Tell the jury what kind of little sister Amber was when y'all were small.
She was the little sister that I always looked up to. I've always admired her for being brave. She's outgoing. She just has this certain positive energy that everybody gravitates toward. They want to be her friend.
Okay. Did y'all, your house was pretty small that you grew up in, is that right?
It was. It was probably just around 800, 900 square feet, I want to say.
Did you share a bedroom with Amber?
Yes, we did.
Okay. Can you tell us what Amber was like as a little girl?
Kind, bubbly, outgoing. She always wanted to be outside. I'm always trying to get her to play Barbies with me. We both shared the same musical interest in Selena, the Spice Girls, Britney Spears, all the 90s pop bands like Backstreet Boys and such.
Did she follow that musical interest as she got older?
Definitely. We had all the posters, all the walls completely covered.
Did she enjoy playing music herself?
She did. She took up orchestra in junior high, and she played the violin, and then I believe it was her sophomore year of high school, she started playing the trumpet in the marching band.
When she was about 5 years old, there was a man named Mr. Ortiz that was arrested for molesting. Do you recall that?
Yes, it was a man that my mother was dating, and he touched her inappropriately on a few occasions.
Did you and Amber go through counseling after he was after that his behavior was discovered?
Yes, we went through counseling in Arlington for about 6 months. It was a program that was provided by the city.
How did Amber respond to that counseling?
She held a lot in, and she would only talk to me about it, what happened. But I think the counseling, helped kind of bring out the feelings.
Was that her personality, the whole thing's in?
Yes, she doesn't like to upset those around her.
You eventually moved out of the house after you got out of high school.
I moved out and following graduation from high school and went to the University of North Texas.
Did you and Amber stay close to one another after you started college?
Yes, she always wanted to spend the night at my apartment on the weekends. And she had a key to a few of my apartments, and she would come over whenever she wanted to. My dad would drop her off, and we would watch movies together and do sister overnight fun stuff.
As she got out of high school, you recall Amber what she was pursuing at that time when she graduated?
Oh, can you repeat the question?
When Amber got out of high school, graduated from high school, what was her interest? What was she pursuing? What were her goals?
She wanted to be a police officer and obtain a criminal justice degree. She went to Tarrant County College to do her basics and then continued on at the University of Texas at Arlington.
Was she working full-time while she did that?
She has been working full-time, 40 hours per week or more since she was 16.
Do you know why Amber started working that hard that early?
She is very responsible. She's always wanted to be financially stable and put herself through school. She didn't want to take out any loans or have any debts.
What was once Amber applied to the Dallas Police Department, was accepted? How did she respond to that?
She was so happy that she was going to be able to have a career where she could help others in need. And
after she became a Dallas police officer, were you able to stay in communication with each other and still able to meet on occasion?
yes, we would go out to dinner, meet up at restaurants with the family.
How close is your family?
We're very close.
Stay in a lot of communication with one another?
Yes, I call my mom all the time to make sure she's doing okay. And even though we're all busy, we all have crazy hours, we manage to stay close and communicate.
Does Amber stay in touch and watch her mother since she's become a police officer?
Yes, she'll just show up to her house unexpected to make sure she is stocked up on medications for her health issues and bring her little thoughtful gifts for no reason.
Has she done the same with you?
She has. I recently fell at work about a month and a half ago, and I had blood all over my clothes, and she brought me a spare change of clothes, stopped off at Academy, and surprised me. She's like,
since the incident, September 6th, 2018, have you had a chance to observe your sister, how this has affected her?
it has affected her.
How would you say it's affected her?
She's doesn't have that same light or energy that she had before.
Have you seen your sister express remorse to you for having shot Botham John and taken his life?
Yes, she's expressed to me how she feels bad spending time with her family because he can't be with his.
You know your sister well. Does she seem genuine in her remorse?
She's one of the most genuine people you can ever meet, and I know those that know her would attest to that.
I'll pass the witness, Your Honor.
Thank you, Ms. Geiger. No questions.
Thank you very much, Ms. Geiger.
Thank you.
Your Honor will call Nancy Bishop.
Bishop, if you would, please raise your right hand and sworn. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you will give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Absolutely, yes.
Thank you very much.
Can you state your name, please, and spell your name for the court reporter?
Yes, Nancy Bishop, Nancy Bishop.
Bishop, how are you related to Amber Guyger?
I am Amber's aunt.
On which side of the family are you?
Karen is my sister.
Is she older or younger sister?
I'm the older sister.
Okay. And where do you currently live? What city?
I live in Austin.
Okay. Did you used to live here in the Metroplex?
Yes, I lived in Dallas and Oak Cliff for 11 years.
Okay.
Lived there as a child and came back.
And did you were you living in the Dallas area when Amber was a young child?
Yes.
Did you have occasions to meet with the family and be around Amber on many occasions when she was growing up?
From the day she was born.
Okay. Could you describe to the jury what kind of child Amber was?
Very loving. I mean, I don't think she ever closed a conversation without saying that, I love you. Very caring and just very affectionate. I love being around her because she, just has this wonderful spirit, where she can, get to know everybody easily, having so much positive energy.
Has she always been that way as she grew up?
Always, yeah.
How was she with her family?
The same way. I mean, she would stay and, go over there almost weekly or every other week, as busy as she was. She would do things like take her mother to the zoo, even if it was 100 degrees, always doing things for her family.
And did you know about Amber's desire to be a police officer?
Yes. I knew that's what she was studying for. She was very dedicated to that was her ultimate goal.
Okay. Did that worry you after she became a police officer?
Oh, of course.
Did you express that?
Because yes, because I know the area that she chose to work in, was very dangerous and would be difficult.
Did Amber want to? That didn't seem to bother Amber?
No. She said she wanted to be where she could be most effective.
Thank you, Ms. Bishop. That's all the questions I have, Jim.
Thank you, Ms. Bishop. No questions, Your Honor. Okay.
Thank you.
should be excused from.
Oh, of course.
No objections in the state.
Thank you, Ms. Bishop.
Next one. Yes. Call Officer Oyambo.
Officer, if you would please raise your right hand and be sworn. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you will give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you very much.
Could you please state your name and spell your first and last name for the record?
My name is Kathy Odhiambo. I go by Kate, Cathy, and my last name is Odhiambo.
And how are you employed?
I am employed with the City of Dallas.
And in what capacity with the City of Dallas?
I'm a police officer
And how long have you been a police officer?
for 6 years.
And do you know the woman sitting 2 seats to my right? Do you know who that is?
Yes, that's my friend,
And what's her name?
Amber Guyger.
How long have you known Miss Geiger?
I have known her for over 10 years.
And how did you and Miss Geiger first meet?
We first met at TGI Fridays. We used to work at the airport at TGI Fridays. She had just transferred, was picking up shifts. She had just transferred from a TGI Fridays in Arlington. So she came through and we clicked instantly.
And as y'all, you worked together with her at TGI Fridays, were y'all both going to school to pursue your degrees?
Yes, we clicked instantly because we realized we went to the same high school and we realized we were going to the same college, which was UT Arlington at the time. And we just clicked. It was.
And can you, at some point, you weren't majoring to be a police officer?
No, at the time when I met her, I was a business major at UT Arlington. She always wanted to be a police officer. Everybody around her knew that was her dream from when she was a little girl. That was all. For me, police officer came about later on in life. But for her, that was all she ever wanted, all she ever dreamed of.
And you eventually decided to go the police officer route, correct?
Yes, sir.
And then you did that, you joined the Dallas Police Department before Amber did, correct?
I sure did.
And have you ever worked together with her as a police officer?
No, we were not lucky to work together. We were together at the academy. I was towards the end of my academy and she was just beginning. So we were there briefly for about 6 months together. She was a few classes behind me. I never worked with her in the streets because we went to different stations.
You're in the southwest sector of Dallas and she was in the southeast, correct?
Yes, sir.
But did you continue to maintain your friendship and your bond?
Absolutely. We were always friends. We had similar backgrounds. We worked as servers for 5-6 years together while we were going to school. So we always kept in touch, encouraged each other. She knows my whole family. I know her family, my kids.
What is her personality like?
Amber, she cares. She's so caring, selfless, thinks about others before herself. She's kind. She's good to people. She's the sweetest girl. Everybody who knows her knows that Amber is the sweetest person.
Has she always been willing to help you?
Absolutely. I can give a scenario. I remember, and she probably doesn't remember this until now. I was pregnant at the time, and I bought a crib and changing table all the way in Frisco, and I live in Mansfield area. And I know people with trucks, but I asked her to help me. I was like, "Hey, Amber, you think you can help me with your truck?" And she was like, "No, I'm gonna drive you there." So she drives all the way. She used to live in Forney, and she drove all the way from Forney to Mansfield area to pick me up so we can drive all the way to Frisco to pick up this caribbean changing table. And that's just the kind of person she is. And on the way back, we didn't strap the changing table properly, and it flew off the highway, and we were driving and realized it's missing. And she's like, oh my goodness, we gotta go back. And she's like, that could cause an accident, you know? Somebody could get hurt. So we circle back, we come back on the highway, and this was 161, and everybody knows 161, people drive past 70 miles an hour. And we circle back, and we see it in the middle of the highway, and she parks on the side of the highway, and I want to go run for it, because it's my changing table. And she's like, oh no, you're pregnant, you can't run for that. And this girl just dashes in the middle of the highway and grabs the changing table and brings it out of the highway, you know, and there were cars coming through. And she just really did not want somebody to, you know, have an accident with that changing table on the highway. And that's the kind of person she is. And I can tell more stories. And there's been instances where I'm like, hey, Amber, I need you to pick me up from the doctor's office. I don't have anybody. And she would drop things just to be there and pick me up from the doctor's office because I couldn't.
So, you know, throughout your relationship with Amber, you developed a strong bond, and she's always been there for you, correct?
She's always been there for me. She's a friend I can talk to. I call her when I'm having difficulties. She's that friend because she listens to you, and she cares about my kids, and she's around my family. And this is a girl that I love as a friend. She's been good to me all my life, all the time that I've known her, not all my life, all the time I've known her.
Thank you, Officer O'Neill. I'll pass the witness.
No questions, Your Honor.
May she be excused.
No objection.
Thank you very much, officer.
Call Robert Richardson.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you will give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, ma'am.
Make yourself comfortable.
Could you please state your first and last name and spell them for the court reporter?
My name is Rhonda Richardson, R-H-O-N-D-A. Last name is R-I-C-H-E-S-O-N.
And how are you employed?
I'm employed with the Dallas Police Department.
And what is your current position?
Currently, I'm a detective in the robberies division.
And how long have you been with the Dallas Police Department?
20 years.
And at some point in your career, were you a field training officer assigned to the Southeast substation?
Yes, sir, I was. I worked at Southeast for 15 years, and 9 of that I was a field training officer.
And can you tell them, just briefly, very briefly, can you just tell members of the jury what a field training officer?
Absolutely. Yes, the field training officers, when a recruit comes out of the academy, and we all go through this, we spend about 6 months with a trainer. It's broken up in 3 phases, and then the last phase is 4th phase, where we sit with a recruit after the 3 phases, after they've gone through it, and we let them try to be on their own just to see if they're going to be able to make it out on the streets.
And they don't want to just let police officers go straight from the academy. You want senior officers that give them guidance and on-the-job training in sometimes tense, dramatic, dangerous situations, correct?
Absolutely. When they're riding with trainers, they're a police officer. I mean, that's what they're doing, and we're answering the same calls, the dangerous calls and the not so dangerous calls, but they're learning right beside the senior officers.
And did you have the opportunity to train the woman sitting 2 seats from me, Amber Guyger?
Absolutely.
you know what phase of training you had her for?
I do. I had her for 4th phase training.
And what does that mean?
Again, you have phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3. You start with the phase 1 and you just progress. You progress on the calls that you take and all that. By the time you get to 4th phase, you should be, as a recruit, you should be working on your own, being able to find out the answers that you might not know to the calls that you go to. We go to all different types of calls. I'm there, a 4th phase trainer is there to help, to assist, but we want to make sure that when she gets, or when the officer gets out on the street, that they know what they're doing.
And just describe what your impression of was Amber Guyger during the time that you were training her.
Amber came to me ready to be out on the streets. It was a pleasure to train her, or to sit with her. The first few days, I made sure I was there to help her out and stuff like that. I acted as a trainer. But the rest of the 2.5 weeks that I had her, I told her, I said, you're ready. You're ready to get out there and do this job. Let's just be partners now. So we acted like partners. We answered calls together, 2-man, the dangerous calls, and she did fantastic.
And like any rookie, there are mistakes that are made, correct?
Yes, sir. There's mistakes made by all of us.
and did she take direction and criticism well?
Amber always took criticism very well, yes.
And then while, once she left training, did she stay in the Southeast and you were still in patrol at the same time, correct?
Yes. Once she left me, she went to Little T and rode with another senior officer, which is normal. And then I went on and started training somebody else.
And did she continue in your interactions and seeing her to continue to be a hard worker for the Dallas Police Department?
That's all I ever heard from the other officers that were riding with her.
Now, you're in eventually you left patrol and you're now a robbery detective, correct?
Yes, yes.
And were you investigating some of the robberies that were connected to the operation on September 6th?
Yes, I was.
And we've heard a lot about it, so I'm not going to repeat, but as a robbery detective, do you depend on the CRT teams in the different sectors of Dallas to help run operations to apprehend these dangerous felons?
Absolutely.
And did you see Amber that day?
I did.
Was she out there on the scene or back at headquarters?
I was on the scene, and she was on the scene, but she was a ways away from me, so I didn't see her at the scene, no. I mean, I saw her, but I didn't talk to her.
I will pass the witness.
No question, no.
This officer be excused.
No objection.
No objection from this case.
Thank you, Detective Richardson.
Thank you, ma'am.
Call Officer McPherson.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Make yourself comfortable. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you will give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So help you God.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you very much.
Would you please state your name and spell your first and last name for the court reporter?
Thomas McPherson, Thomas. McPherson is MacPherson.
And how are you employed?
I'm employed by the City of Dallas
And what capacity?
as a police officer.
And where are you currently assigned?
I'm currently assigned to the Dallas SWAT team.
And that's the tactical unit that is used for, I guess, dynamic, dangerous operations, correct?
Yes, that would be a correct description of it. We run most of our narcotic warrants, and we handle barricaded person or active shooter situations.
Officer McPherson, do you know the woman sitting 2 seats to my right, Amber Guyger?
Yes, it's my friend Amber Guyger.
And how long have you known Miss Geiger?
I've known Amber almost 6 years now.
And where did you and Miss Geiger meet?
We were in the same academy class.
And did you quickly bond?
Yes, we did.
After leaving the academy, were you both assigned to the southeast section of Dallas?
Yes, we were. We were assigned to the same substation after training, or after we got done with the academy and on to training.
And did you and Miss Geiger were both in the patrol section, correct?
That is correct.
And did you get the occasion to work with her on numerous occasions?
Yes, we worked the same shift, so we would answer calls together, or we would be in the same detail. So yes, I got a lot of interaction with Amber.
And did you like working with her? Did you feel safe being out on the streets with Amber?
Absolutely, yeah. Amber was someone that you could depend on.
On July 7th, 2016, were you and Ms. Geiger working?
Yes, we were. We were working night shift at the time, but we had come in early to work some overtime, some call answering overtime, and we were on a different call when we heard the officer assist come out.
And when you heard the officer assist come out, where did you go?
Amber actually heard it first, and she grabbed me and said that we need to go. There's something going on downtown, and at that point there was a lot of chaos. There was a lot of confusion, but we knew that we needed to go down, and so we drove from Pleasant Grove down to Central, which is where everything was going on.
Central, which is downtown Dallas?
Yes, correct, yes.
And when you got to, did you get too close to El Centro College? Was that seemed to be the focus of the activity?
Yes, that is correct. We drove as close as we could. Obviously, there was a lot of cars, a lot of squad cars, so we pulled up as close as we could to El Centro, and from there, we were getting out of the car, and we're continuing to hear gunshots, and I distinctly remember Amber being so brave, and I was driving, she was in the passenger seat, and she was just ready to go. She told me, let's go, and we were downtown for the whole night until about 6 o'clock that morning.
Let me stop you
Yep.
there, Officer McPherson. So when you got to the scene and you could hear the gunshots, did y'all stay back, or did you run towards where the gunshots were coming from?
No, we ran towards where the gunshots were going.
And along the way, did you have to help or assist any citizens or other people trying to get them out of the way of any potential harm?
Yes, that's correct. We were trying to move as close as we could to the gunfire, and obviously with all the panic and pandemonium, we were trying to get as many citizens either to stay low in their cars or just keep running away from everything, because we just, like I said, we were still trying to figure out what was going on, but the citizens didn't need to be anywhere near there.
And since that time, you worked with Ms. Geiger in patrol and in the CRT unit, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And was she always a hard worker and someone who always had your back?
Oh, absolutely. There's no doubt in my mind.
And you're still good friends with her today, is that correct?
Yes, sir. That is correct.
I'll pass the witness.
Just briefly, Officer McPherson?
Yes, ma'am.
The CRT unit, you said y'all are a close-knit group?
Yes, ma'am.
In fact, you all had like a text thread that you all would respond to each other on.
Yes, ma'am.
And in that text thread,
was there some discourse about the supervision over your unit, your close-knit unit that you just discussed?
Yeah, I mean, we would always talk about, our group, or we would talk about what was going on that day. Yes, that would be correct.
Okay, not only the group, but just also the supervisors that's over your group.
Correct, yes.
And so, is it fair to say that some of you all were close-knit versus that the entire group was a close-knit group?
No, I would say that we were all close-knit. I would, in my opinion, that would be a correct statement.
In that group of text messages, you all refer to someone as Tubby. Is that correct?
Yes.
Objection to relevance.
I see you over here. I don't have a problem with them coughing. I was just trying to offer them a minute if they needed it. I know how hard it is to suppress a cough. Ms. Long, I'm going to allow you, because I'm trying to figure out if what it is you're intending or where it is you're trying to go is relevant. So I'm going to allow you to ask questions so we can get a prompt of where it is you're trying to go and not have to be whispering over here to the side.
And so what I'm trying to get to is, Officer McPherson, a few weeks ago you met with us, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am, that's correct.
And you talked about how, and we asked you during that meeting about the set of text messages that you all, the CRT has a text thread that you all exchange communications through, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And in that text thread, you all talk about, amongst multiple things, your day, and you also talk about the supervision that you all are experiencing within the CRT.
Yes, ma'am, that's correct.
And in fact, you all, including the defendant, have made comments about, or I should say derogatory comments about the supervision within your supervisor in particular.
Okay.
Is that, am I making this up, or is that true?
No, I'm not. No, you're not making it up.
Okay. And so, when we talk about Ms. Geiger, the defendant, being, you know, a hard worker and respectful and all these other things, I mean, there are some times that it's not as respectful as you just displayed to that jury.
Okay. Well,
Is that a yes or no statement?
could you repeat the question, please? Just because. Yeah.
For clarification.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
You just displayed to this jury that she was a respectful person and she respected others, and I said has been times where she has not been as respectful of the individuals that supervise her, and then other individuals either with Dallas Police Department and or in the community.
Okay. Yes, that's correct. But it's not just a yes or no question either, you know. Would I be able to explain myself, ma'am? Is that okay?
Well, and I'm sure he'll let you expound on what you want to talk about. And in fact, you talked about her getting out there and trying to help citizens and responding to the crisis in which the city was facing on that July 7th evening.
Yes.
And are you aware of the text messages that she sent about pepper spraying the citizens during the MLK parade?
No, ma'am.
And if she said something like that, would that shock you?
I would say it'd be out of character.
And would it also, have she ever mentioned to you, or are you aware that she's mentioned about the work ethic of different officers of different ethnicities?
No, she hasn't. We have not had any conversations about that.
And would it surprise you to know that she made a comment that I'm not racist, but we just work kind of different?
It would sound out of character for her.
Remember, that's the line of question, and I would still pursue.
You have objection, or do you have any questions?
Could I clarify a few things, Judge?
Yes.
So the prosecutor talked about these derogatory, disrespectful, awful comments that were made about your supervisor. Do you remember, did someone call him in a text thread Tubby?
Yes.
Okay. Did anyone call that to him to his face?
No, I don't believe so.
Was there any did anyone not follow the sergeant's orders because they made a comment that they called him Tubby on the text thread?
No, sir.
All right, so that's the derogatory comment about the sergeant, correct?
From my understanding, yes.
All right. And the other comments, you're not aware of those, you aren't part of those text conversations, correct?
No, sir.
Do you have anything else, Ms. Long?
Well, the defense attorney asked you, did y'all not follow his instructions? But there were moments in the CRT, at least according to the text thread, that you all did not always follow his instructions. Is that fair to say?
I mean, there's a lot of text messages, ma'am, so it's hard to say. I don't know what you're trying to get at, though. Could you explain a little bit more, please?
He used the word always. Always means just that, always. All the time.
Okay.
Did you always, all the time, follow everything you, the defendant, it was 5 of you all on that team, correct? Rivera?
Yes, ma'am.
Mark Rivera, all of you all. Did you always follow all the instructions that was given to you by that certain supervisor?
I can't say always. I think this is too much of a define, of a solid, because I think there's just a multiplicity of decisions and stuff like that that are made throughout the time that we were there.
If that's fair. I'm not saying always. That was the word came from that person.
So let me be clear. You want the jury to hear that in the CRT's text thread, which included all of the persons working on the team, with the exception of the supervisor, there were derogatory comments about the supervisor, specifically calling him Tubby, and derogatory comments about his supervision.
Yes, Your Honor.
And your objection is?
Because it's not relevant to the issue at hand and the moral culpability of.
I'll sustain your objection. We won't go into her having referenced her supervisor as, well, I don't know if it was her or just a text thread, referencing the supervisor as Tubby or criticizing his supervisory style. Is there anything more that we need from Officer McPherson?
And asking him about the questions about the text message from the MLK.
Was he on that thread?
I don't believe, well,
No, he was not.
Your Honor, I think it's a question to ask about her character because that's what he's been talking about.
And so you want to ask him if it was out of character for her to have described
Pepper spraying the public when he just talked about her trying to save the public?
Well,
I think you all have those text threads in evidence.
Yes, Your Honor.
So in as much as he was not on the text thread, I will not allow you to ask him about that question.
Okay.
They're in evidence. Can you ask her to bring the jury back? Mr. Rogers, I'm not trying to...
3 more minutes.
We'll probably keep it. Are you okay with this?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
All right.
Thank you. You all may be seated.
Thank you.
Yes, please.
Officer Councilman McPherson, is it fair to say that you're not with the defendant all times of the day?
Yes, that's correct.
Is it fair to say that you don't know what type of communications that she had with anybody other than with you?
That would be correct.
So you don't know what her character is, only what her character is with you is what you've seen?
Well, that's the only thing I can testify to, yes, what I've seen from her.
Possibly.
Nothing further.
Thank you, Deeds.
No objection.
No objection.
Thank you very much, officer.
Thank you, ma'am.
The defense would call Maribel Chavez.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you will give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
Could you tell us your name, please, and spell your first and last name for the court reporter?
Yeah, Maribel Chavez, M-A-R-I-B as in boy, E-L-C-H-A-V-E-Z.
How old are you?
I'm 29.
Where do you work?
I'm a retail store manager.
Do you know Amber Guyger?
Yes.
How long have you known her?
14 years or so.
Can you tell the jury about when y'all met?
Yeah. It was 9th grade. I started in the orchestra there, and that's where we met.
Did y'all become friends pretty quickly?
Yeah.
Can you describe a little bit your friendship?
Yeah, she's, Amber's a very engaging person. She's very bubbly. Her energy's attracting. People just want to be around her.
Did y'all both play in orchestra in high school?
Yes.
And did y'all end up also performing in a mariachi band together?
Yes.
Okay, tell us a little bit about that.
My 10th grade year in high school, our high school band director started a mariachi group. So I was so involved in extracurriculars that day, I happened to have nothing to do. So I said, okay, let me join the group. So I started playing, and Amber was playing with us, and she played violin when we started. She played trumpet with us too, and we took that after high school as well.
And were you aware of what type of career Amber was interested in?
She wanted to go into law enforcement.
And why was that?
She's just, she's always wanted to take care of people. And she's a people person.
Yes. Ms. Chavez, I want to show you two pictures that have been marked as defendant's exhibits number 97. Is this a picture of you and Amber together with the other members of the mariachi band?
Yes.
And the same with defendant's exhibit number 98?
Yes.
Number 97, 98.
No objection, Your Honor.
Both admitted and may be published.
Thank you, Judge. What kind of relationship did all of you that played in the mariachi band have?
We were like sisters. Through high school, it was a really big group. When we graduated high school, we started our an all-female mariachi group. It was sisterhood. We were just really close.
In this photo, defendant's exhibit number 97, this is Amber here in the middle?
Yes.
And this is you over here on the right?
Yes, ma'am.
And then another photo, defendant's exhibit number 98. Is this you to the left of Amber?
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Chavez, what kind of person is Amber Guyger?
She's a
protect her. Anytime we've taken trips just to visit different cities, different states, she's always been the one to take care of us. She's very selfless. She's very caring. She just has a lot of love to give.
Ms. Chavez, a few weeks after the shooting on September 6, 2018, did you have an opportunity to see Amber?
Yes.
Can you explain what her demeanor was like?
She was very, it's like if you shut her light off. She's a very extroverted person. She loves people. But when I did get a chance to see her, it wasn't her. And she would go into her moments where she'd kind of try to chip her up, and then she just kind of fall right back.
Can you explain for the jury the remorse that you've seen from her?
She's had immense remorse. Amber has a lot of love to give, but Amber doesn't. Even prior to this, Amber, I don't feels like she's worthy of love. That she's not worthy of a big love. So this happened, and she just does not feel like she deserves to have any kind of happiness. And anytime she even gets close to even like a smile, she kind of reverts back.
Why is it that she feels like she doesn't deserve to
She feels remorseful, immense remorse.
Do you know what she's relied on this past year to deal day to day with what had happened?
Her family, her friends, faith. I don't really remember Amber being a person of faith through high school. And up until a couple years ago, I would say probably when she did join the force, she started looking into that, and then that's just really what's kept her up and her puppy.
So when she started with the academy is when you feel like her faith started to grow at that point?
Yes, ma'am.
I'll pass the witness.
No questions, Your Honor.
May she be excused?
Okay, I'm staying.
Thank you very much, Ms. Chavez.
Judge, the defense would call Brenda Solis.
Ms. Solis, please raise your right hand and be sworn. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you will give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
Could you tell us your name, please, and spell your last name for the court reporter?
Brenda Salas, S-A-L-E-S.
How old are you, Ms. Solis?
29.
Can you tell the members of the jury how you know Amber Guyger?
It's my best friend.
How long have you known her?
Since the 7th grade.
Where were y'all in school that you met?
Carter Junior High.
Can you tell the members of the jury how it was that you two became friends?
We met in orchestra. I didn't have any classes with Amber.
I was the orchestra teacher. She would open the orchestra room for us as a safe place. Orchestra students, orchestra players sort of have a nickname for themselves. We're called Orc Dorks. She would open up the room as a safe place, and during this time, my family and I were going through some really hard times. I felt like I was alone. Like I couldn't talk to anybody about any of this stuff, and Amber was there to listen to me.
You mentioned that the orchestra teacher would open that room up for y'all as a safe place.
Yes.
Were you and Amber and some of the other kids somewhat bullied during that time?
Yeah.
Have you stayed close friends with Amber through high school and through college years and on?
Through high school. Again, didn't have any classes with her except for orchestra, and her and I were always usually in just around the same section. So her and I would, for the most part, or from time to time, share stands. So we would be together in there. Other than orchestra, I didn't have any other class or any other place where I would see her, but we still stayed in touch. After high school, I went to UTA and kind of lost contact with a lot of my friends. Amber and Maribel being two of them. I was just focused on my studies. Maribel and I saw her again and we sort of reconnected. We picked up right where we left off, and she would always surprise me and bring Amber, and that to me was always the best gift that anyone could give me, because she just has this light about her.
You mentioned that there was a period of time when you were really focused on your studies. What did you end up graduating with?
My degree is in exercise science.
And did you do undergraduate?
I did undergrad, and then I got my master's from LSU in Shreveport. I think it was May of 2018.
Was Amber there at your graduation?
Yes.
Yes.
Let me show you what's been marked as defendant's exhibits number 99 and 100. Do you recognize these as photos of you and Amber and Maribel from junior high and then also from later in life?
Yes.
You'd offer defendant's exhibits 99 and 100. No objection, Your Honor.
They're both admitted.
Have you published it?
Yes.
Defendant's exhibit 99. That's you on the right in the purple shirt?
Yes.
And Maribel in the middle?
Yes.
And then Amber on the left, is that right? And the three of you have stayed close friends up until this day, is that right?
Yes.
And that's exhibit 100. Is that you in the middle?
Yes.
And Amber's on the left?
Yes.
And Maribel's on the right?
Yes.
Where were y'all in this picture?
We went to Chicago. we went for the Rangers versus Cubs game. With it, yeah.
Ms. Hollis, can you describe what kind of person Amber is to this jury?
She's a loving person, very caring, silly.
And how has that person that you know, that personality, how has that changed since September 6th, 2018?
I love her because of her silliness and the fact that she can always make us laugh. And after the horrible incident, I feel like she has to try harder to be that person, and it's not there anymore. She's not Amber anymore.
What kind of remorse have you seen from her regarding this incident?
So much. The last time that I saw her, she just told me that she just wanted to say sorry to his family.
No questions, Your Honor.
Yes, you need to see.
No objection from the state.
Thank you very much, Ms. Hollis.
Your Honor, the defense would call on the clerk.
Please raise your right hand at this point. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you will give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you very much.
Could you state your first and last name, please, and spell both for the court reporter?
LaWanda Clark. LaWanda,
How old of a woman are you, Ms. Clark?
I am 67 years old.
Do you have children?
Yes, I do.
How many kids do you
I
have?
have 3 living.
3 living children right now?
Yeah.
Do you have grandkids as well?
Yes, I do.
How many grandkids?
I have
do you
9.
I'm sorry?
9.
9 grandkids. And do you currently work?
Yes, I do. I'm employed at Walgreens, and I'm also working at the State Fair of Texas.
Do you know Amber Guyger?
Yes, I do.
Throughout your adulthood, have you struggled with a crack cocaine addiction?
I have.
In May of 2017, how was it that you came to know Amber Guyger?
I was at a drug house that day, and the police came and made us all come out. And I didn't see Amber as a policewoman that day, as a policeman at all. I saw Amber as a human being. You know, she kept coming to me and she told me, she said, "You don't fit the profile." You know, she said, "What are you doing here?" You know, and she came back to me several times, you know, saying things similar to that. In other words, she let me know that I mattered. You know, that she just didn't see me as an addict, you know. And as time went on, you know, and it ended up that day, and she wrote the ticket. She said, "Now you can do one or two things with this ticket." She said, "You can either continue on the road that you're on, or you can let this be your ticket out." And that's what I chose to do.
So that day, how many people were in that house with you?
About 8 to 10.
And before the police arrived, were y'all using drugs?
Yes.
And you say that Amber mentioned y'all got tickets, and she talked about this ticket is either two things you can do, either keep using drugs or use it as a ticket for life to start over.
Right.
So y'all got issued Class C tickets, is that right?
Right.
And that was for drug paraphernalia that was visible to the officers? Is that right?
That's right.
And where did you have to go with that ticket?
With that ticket, I went to the South Dallas Community Court, where they had a program set up. And I had like so many tickets. My life had become a disaster. So I started the program there, and I started to live again. I did my IOP, I did my SOP, and the first time that I phased up in that program was the first time in a long time that I felt like I made an accomplishment.
Did you end up graduating from that program?
Yes, I did. And Amber came to my graduation.
Yes.
I'm going to show you what's been marked as defense exhibit number 101. Do you recognize this photo?
Yes.
Is that a photo of you and Amber from your graduation from
Yes,
that
it is.
community drug program?
Yes.
Parole for Defense 101.
No objection, Your Honor.
It's admitted.
Permission to publish, Ellen?
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Clark, how did it make you feel that day that Amber took the time to visit with you and ask you what was going on in your life that caused you to end up at that dope house?
It made me feel so human. It really empowered me that day. It really made me feel like, it really made me stop and think. You know, really, what am I doing here?
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Did any of the other officers who were there pull anybody else aside and visit with
I don't know if they did. I don't know if they did. I mean, I was in such a state. You know, I'm thinking of, what is this going to do to my family? You know, if this goes in a bad direction. I was so ashamed, is what it was. You know, so I really don't know what else is going on. I just wanted it to be over. Let me go. You know, and I sat there on the porch and I prayed, you know, and I asked God, I said, if you let me get out of this, I'm done. And I have not gone back.
And that was your day of sobriety?
Yes,
right?
indeed. Yes, indeed.
And your graduation from that drug program, that picture that we see in Defense 101, that was a kind of a restart of life for you in a way, is that
Yes,
right?
it was.
And that was the day that you, in fact, sought out having Amber come there, is that right?
Yes.
Okay, how did that work?
Well, I asked when I was coming up for graduation, I asked Judge Williams if I could have the police officer that wrote me the ticket come to my graduation, because I wanted her to know what an impact she made on my life. You know what I mean?
And what was the reaction that Amber had at your...
Oh, she was elated. I don't know who was more excited, if it was her or if it was me. You know, just to know that I made it. You know, that I really did take that ticket as my ticket out. You know, and recovery is in my life every day. I have my family back. I have my children back. I have my grandchildren. I have a life now. I'm gainfully employed. You know, I have an automobile. I have a place to live. You know, bills are paid. Credit score is going up. You know what I mean?
Yes, ma'am. After the shooting on September 6th of 2018, did you try to reach out to Amber?
Yes.
How did you do that?
I went to community court and I asked Officer Joe, you know, because I would go there and I speak. I'd go over there and I'd do a little mentoring now. And they all met me at the door and they said, well, I know you heard about Amber, but it didn't affect me, I think, the way that they thought it would. But they all rallied around me, so I would get cards and different things and send them to Amber to, lift her up and let her know that I loved her. Because I mean, she's a human being. At the beginning, the middle, and the end of the day, she's still a human being.
Thank you, Ms. Clark. I'll pass the witness.
Ms. Clark, congratulations on your sobriety.
Thank you, thank you.
May she be excused.
No objection from the state.
Thank you very much, Ms. Clark.
Can we approach, Judge?
We're going to take your lunch break. When you heard my phone, that was them telling me they were late. They said they'd be here about this time. So we're going to take your lunch break. We'll start back at 1:30.
All right.
You already see or a break for lunch, I guess. I'm sorry. We don't have anything for